Hi, I'm Jon Sicotte, Executive Editor of the Brewer magazine. Welcome to another edition of the Brewer magazine podcast, and I hope you had a great 4th of July weekend. I just took a little bit of workcation back home in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and was hoping to get some podcasts done while I was there so you could get this nice scenery of the Upper Peninsula in the background, and a few things got rescheduled. So never got a chance to do that, so you didn't get to see my secret hiding spot when I go back home. But we do have some great podcasts lined up for the month of July, so we'll be getting those out, of course, every Tuesday. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, make sure or listening on Spotify, I guess, make sure that you are subscribing so that you're getting updated every Tuesday morning when these things go live, and we'll give you an opportunity to know through our social media channels as well. Okay, so we didn't get a chance to talk to some people while I was in the UP, so I instead ended up having to go back into the archives a little bit, and this is kind of cool. We actually went to Sacramento back in March of 2023, an opportunity to go to the California Craft Brewers Summit and go to their conference. And at the same time, I'm always like, I'm going to make the most of it. So I went and talked to some of the breweries that were in the Sacramento area, including Device, and I got a great chance to talk to Ken Anthony there about the being unique at each location that they have there, ideals that they like to stick with. And then also worked on a story with New Glory, and Julien Lux and Jack Bryan. They were so gracious, got a great chance to sit down and talk over some things. Unfortunately, what was going to be a cover story that ran last year, due to some circumstances, never got around to it. The story was already interviewed. We had over an hour of content, so I've been sharing those. If you've seen, look for Consumer Strategies that propelled Lux to move New Glory ahead. That's one of the headlines. And Crafting Cohesion, how New Glory navigates branding and distribution challenges. Now, those are two of the stories. We got another one that's going to be coming up here this month. But wanted to go and dig into those archives, take some of the interview that we did with Julien and Jack, share with you a little bit of the process of what a cover story entails. So here's some of the history of what is going on with New Glory. We talked to them right before their 10th anniversary. Happy almost 11th, by the way, guys. We talked about how Julien had the distribution background and why he actually kind of regrets going straight with a distributor and doing self-distributing right away. So we talk a little bit about that. His mantra is be the best or be different. They didn't start with an IPA, and he wanted to make sure that they made the best one available when they did, and he explains that, and talk about some of the expansion parts that the brewery has undergone, especially when they upgraded their systems back in 2019. So yeah, enjoy. This is an audio version of Brewer Magazine podcast this week. What kind of was that original business plan? Like, it's so much different than, I know you probably made like 10 business plans in the first year, because you're like, okay, we're growing this way or we're moving this way. How have you developed that and look back to see like, okay, that worked, and that worked, this didn't, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so originally the original business plan, so like just a little bit of background, when I moved here to California from France, my first job was with a beverage distributor. So that's how I kind of got my foot in the industry, essentially, working for wholesalers and learning about beer that way. And then just slowly just kind of like, work my way up in the company, and then, ended up being a sales rep for that distributor, selling, Sierra Nevada beers, Firestone Walkers, all of the, like at that point in time, those were like the craft beer, that was the only option that you could get really locally, and there wasn't that many local breweries here. There was just a brew pub at Rubicon, which now no longer is in business. And like the number one question people always ask was like, what do you have that's local? What do you have that's local? Like as a sales rep, and I'm like, well, I have Sierra Nevada. I'm like, no, that's not local enough. Like, you guys have any beer from, the region, Sacramento, and so that's kind of like what made it. I was a big time home brewer on the side. I picked up home brewing right when I first started working for that distributors, and then just slowly the idea of like, yeah, we could just make some beers, and I know how to sell it, and I know how to make it on the homebrew scale, and maybe we can put two and two together, and I can make my own beer and start selling my own beer. So the original business plan was just to make 3 to 4 different styles, and then just start kind of promoting the beer to local bars and restaurants, because at the time, that was what I saw was the big, what was missing out there. Like there was nothing available to a bar or to a local mom and pop stores to sell, and that's how when we opened New Glory.
Coming from that distribution side and having that background, did you go directly into working with a wholesaler?
Yeah, and I think that's like, looking back, I think that's probably one of the things that I would have it worked out to us till then, but we never had the chance to like build the self-distribution side, which I think, looking back, I think can be pretty important to a small brewery, especially right now. But yeah, back then, right away, we just we signed on with the distributors, not the one that I was working with. Sadly, I was hoping that that's the way it was gonna work. But right away, our local distributors just knocked on the door and says, I know you guys. We were not even barely open. And they're like, hey, you guys opening. I know you guys are gonna make some beer. Can we sell it for you?
Yeah.
And I felt pretty comfortable just because, like, coming from that distributor side, I know kind of how they worked and everything. So we just right away just started, working with a wholesaler.
Nice. And did you have any part of your sales team put together at this, or were you relying on your wholesalers?
I was just relying on the wholesalers, and then all my connections that I've made. I mean, I worked with the wholesaler that I worked for. I was there for about 6-7 years. Okay. So I had the chance to make a lot of connections. And obviously craft beer being my passion at the time, anything that had to do with like Firestone Walker or Sierra Nevada, like whether it was an event or whatever, I attended all those. I helped set them up and promote them. So I made a lot of connections in, on the on-premise side. So all the bars and restaurants and all those tap houses and all that stuff. So combination of like them being able to facilitate delivering the beers and me like, going around and visiting all the people that I already knew and was friend with.
Yeah. I think that does force you though to improve your quality immediately, because if it's not going to sell for a distributor, they're not going to want to sell your product. I think you can get away with a little bit more if you're selling it across the bar top and you're just making a small amount. Did you see that right away? Like, you need to come out of the gates with quality.
Yeah, right away. And we had some of those issues, whether it's like, we were making a Saison at the time, and like it tended to just like get really overcarbonated. And, here it was fine because we knew how to deal with that. But then you got the beer into accounts that didn't know how to deal with a beer that was slightly over like higher carbonation, it comes out foamy or whatever. And then we started getting into a lot of issues like that. Yeah.
So was this on the 15 barrel at the beginning, or were you using?
No, we were using even a smaller system back then. We had like
1.5 barrel.
Yeah, it was like 1.5 barrel brew house that like we had built ourselves. Like it was like a Franken Brew kind of thing. Literally, actually back then I bought like, you could buy the Franken Brew like DVD. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
And show you how to make some stuff together. And we bought some like big pots and welded everything together and built some automation to it. So like we like. So we brewed on for the first like year and a half. 2 years. Yeah.
So then you started and then you were looking for a system. From that point, like probably when you were opening, like, all right, if we're going to see it, did you buy new or find a used one?
We found a used one.
Yeah.
Actually, it's kind of funny. The story behind that piece of equipment was there's a brewery I think that's still existing in Bakersfield called Lengthwise Brewing Company, and they were the original owner of this brew house. And then they upgraded and they sold it to some dude on the East Coast. So the brew house left Bakersfield, California, traveled all the way across the U.S. to Philadelphia, and their plans fell through. So they never like started the brewery that they were starting to acquire equipment for. So they put it back for sale, and we bought it back and shipped it back all the way across the United States, back to Sacramento.
Wow! And then so you were on that system for about 6 years then.
So 2014. That's when we commissioned it here, and up until the end of 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all manual too.
Yep, all manual. Like we like
15 barrels of mash by hand.
I know. We had like nice strong shoulders back then. Those trapeze or whatever they're called. It looked all pretty buff at the brewery. Because you have to like grind everything out by hand. You have to stir everything by hand. So. Yeah, one of the somewhat unique thing about us too when we first opened, I would say that I'll never make an IPA.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was one of those guys. Or like everybody else was making IPAs, and I'm like, why if we're not the first or we can't be the best, why try to compete? You know what I mean? Like that's always been our motto here. We either need to be the first or we need to be the best. Within the first 6-8 months, like people that's all they were asking. We're like,
Sure.
We want an IPA. We want an IPA. We're like, I want to make one. Everybody else does.
It's hard to be in a brewery in California without an IPA.
Yeah. We're like, I'm about to try my Saison.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit of hops in there.
Well, I think everyone that comes into it wants to be able to, show this is what I'm all about. But you do understand it's a business and you have to be able to make money. So, you kind of have to be able to make those sales.
Yeah.
So how was it a quick, let's just get an IPA out there? Or did you think about what you wanted to, again, be the best or be different?
Yeah, I think so. When we started, we wanted to be different. We want to be, from the time that the idea came together and the time that we actually opened up, there was already 5-6 breweries that had opened up in that same amount of time. Mm-hmm. So now, back to the first question of the business plan is changing rapidly now, because now I'm not the first one. And I'm not the only one. Mm-hmm. And so, how do we differentiate ourselves from these other 5-6 breweries that have popped up in the same amount of time that we opened up? And so, we lean into that, the Belgian and French side, which I knew very well, being from over there. And we were making Saisons and stuff like that. But same thing, just they were selling, but not as much necessarily as we hoped for. And I think people were asking for IPAs, and at one point we said, all right, we'll make one. And when we saw how much faster that beer sold compared to everything else we ever made, that's when we're like, all right, well, let's make another one.
Yeah. And now how's your portfolio line up?
Mostly just IPA and pale ales.
Mm-hmm.
We still try to do the fun stuff, for us, the brewers, and for the tap room, like the pilsners and the lagers and stuff. We haven't done too many Belgian beers in a while. I'm hoping that we can start doing those again soon.
Yeah.
But they're a tough sell out here in California,
I am a big fan of the Saison.
Yeah.
Especially, so I miss that one and always wanted to come back, but it just doesn't move as much. Yeah.
Right. So then we talked a little bit, before I recorded about this, is just being able to add this space. What made you feel that adding this space, was worth the investment, and you felt confident enough to do it?
Yeah. So at the time when we started thinking about expanding, we were making 7,000 barrels of beer on that pub system that we acquired, from the guys in Philadelphia. That means we were triple batching every day, and on that system, it's almost like you have to finish the first batch before you can start the second one, right? So it's almost a 16 to 18 hour brew day there.
And how many days a week were you doing that?
We were doing that 5 days a week. Yeah.
And we're cranking it out.
We're cranking it out, and that system was already pretty old. That system is older than me. I was born in '87. I think that thing was made in the early '80s.
Yeah.
We could tell that very soon, it wasn't gonna last that much longer. Started leaking everywhere. The steam jackets,
Okay.
And so we knew we were gonna need a new system. And then at the time, everything that we made was sold in our tap room. The bulk of it was sold in our tap room, and then a little bit through our distributors, mostly just draft. We had no packaged beer that would leave the building. So everything that we would put in cans at the time would be sold across the tap room. Everything else would go into kegs, into our distributors. And that's when some of our core brands started taking off, like Uberdank and Gummy Worms. Literally, we would make a 40-barrel batch and it would be gone, and we were brewing once a month at the time. Yeah. And then we'll start, let's make 2 batches and it'll be gone. And then let's make 3 batches and it'll be gone. And very soon we're just brewing them every week. We're making a batch and it's gone. And then our distributor at the time, the owner, I was, pretty close. I had a good relationship with them. And I walked in his office one day and he shows me this paper that he's keeping. And he's like, Julien, look, every number here is how many cases that was not able to go on a truck. And he starts telling up, he's been keeping track every time that a rep or someone is placing an order that can't be fulfilled. And he's showing me all the numbers of all the cases of beers on the kegs that's not able to be fulfilled. And So at the time, that's kind of like what's like, okay, we got to do something. We're literally leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
So our system is wearing out. It's only a matter of time till it's like broken beyond repair. And then there's a lot of demand for our products. We're not selling anything to grocery stores. We're not even touching that market. So there's like this huge market that's not even being touched for us. We have the grocery stores calling, asking for our product. So we're like, it only made sense at the time to just expand and bigger brewery so we can satisfy all that demand.
When it comes to now, have the numbers flipped a little bit? Are you mostly distribution and a tap room?
Yeah.
Just a great chance to have people come in.
Yeah. Since the start of COVID, things have changed drastically. It's pretty crazy. But, I try not to kind of look back too much because things that, we used to like kind of refer back to those days a lot. And now we had to tell ourselves that those are the good old days and we got to make do with what we have right now. And that this is the new like how things are,
How has it been adding staff? I think I went through and kind of read through the stories that we've worked on over the past few years, via email, and to see the important pieces in adding people. And for you guys, it really was sales and being able to add that sales department, because you do want to, it's nice to have your wholesaler be able to sell for you,
Yep.
but they can only take it so far. It's nice
Yep.
to be able to add in that thing. How has the sales force improved and grown for you guys over the years?
So it went from like just me going around and using my, my relationship that I had, and then we added a sales rep for the Sacramento market, and then after that we added a director of sales that now was like, was critical to always be in touch with like we call them key accounts, so like the chains and all that stuff, the grocery stores. And then we went to 2 sales rep shortly after that during COVID. And then a lot of that stuff I shrunk back a little bit. So now we have 1 sales rep that covers most of NorCal.
Okay.
He's hyper focused in the Sacramento, Reno, like northern Nevada area. And then we have our VP that she came from Sierra Nevada. So she was a regional sales manager for them. And so she's, now overseeing a lot of the distributors. So she does a lot of the contacts with them, pulling the sales plans together, all that stuff, and keeping an eye on our sales guy, just making sure we're reaching our goals.
Gotcha.
And then I'm back very involved with that side of things too.
Do you like doing that?
Yeah, I love doing that.
Yeah.
I love brewing beer too, and but I also had a lot of experience on the sales side of things. So I kind of I get to touch both right now, which is great. Because I'm pretty involved with production, helping them, figure out what to brew, how much to brew and all the ideas. And then I get to work with our distributors to make sure it moves through their warehouses.
Sure.
So
That's pretty nice. Now, do you guys do a lot of R&D before things are hitting cans, or is it very much I want to make this, we already know we can make it this well, and cause you have
we
a pilot
do a little,
system
we don't have a pilot system anymore. The smallest batch that we can do is actually we can do 15 barrel of beer on that 40 barrel system.
Oh.
So that's kind of like when we want to try something right now, that's what we're doing. Or like if it's something that's like so out there, sometimes what we'll do is like we'll take a neutral base beer, like one of the core brands that's pretty neutral, whether the West Coast or the hazy pale, put it in a 3 barrel or 15 barrel, and like do things to it, just to kind of try things out. Like we've been playing with like the idea of doing somewhat of a citrusy, fruited wheat ale. So we're taking the hazy pale ale, the gummy worm base, before it gets dry hop, transferring it into a 3 barrel tank and start playing with adjuncts and fruits and extracts to kind of see what we do like and what we don't. So
Right.
we try to be creative that way.
Yeah, and just looking at the portfolio you guys have, it's very much. I don't see the hype beer in here. Like you guys, I don't see pastry stouts and things like that.
Yeah.
Are you for it, against it? Like it's not your core.
But
You guys appreciate it, but it's not your.
Yeah,
bread and
it's
butter.
not something that like, we used to make them a lot more often than we do right now. So, before when, everything was sold across the bar, we could just make anything.
Yeah.
Now that we have we have like 13 wholesalers, I think, distributors throughout the Northern California and stuff, we do have to be mindful of what we are brewing in large quantities, because like for example, like the dry Irish stout, like most of our distributors are not gonna want to bring that into the warehouses. So it goes the same thing with the pastry stout. Like, you know, those styles to me are beer that are mostly meant for like, you know, your tap room, and like maybe some very small specialty accounts that just very specialize on like, you know, like their unique tap list or whatever. It's not a beer that we're gonna be able to sell to a lot of bars and restaurants out there.
Right.
Most people go to a restaurant, they're not gonna order a pastry stout to go with their dinners.
Yeah.
It's more a beer that's more fitted for here. So.
And I do think, you know, it's not disparaging to anyone that like lives and dies by all the hazies and, you know, pastries and fruited sours. I mean, I get that there is a market for that, but like it is a slower market growth.
Definitely.
If you guys are seeing, you know, in your thought process
Yep.
with a business this big,
Yep.
you have to be able to have good cores. You have to have,
Yep.
you know, you're going to a very wide general audience versus a craft beer connoisseur.
Yep.
You know, because I think a lot of people focus on that when they're talking about craft beer people, but like you have to realize that there's people that are buying 30 packs of Busch and a 6-pack of a craft beer
And,
at the same time.
People come in and like try like the more hype stuff and be like, oh, that was great. I loved having like a taste of that like little pastry stout or that like 10% kettle sour. But then they always just go back to kind of the easy drinking core that they know and trust. It's always going to be the same.
And I think that's the one thing that has not changed in the business plan or in the idea behind New Glory since we first opened is, you know, we opened with the idea of being a production brewery, and we want to be a household name. That was the idea. Like we want a beer in people's fridges, and you know, at the time, you know, and it's still true right now, we wanted our beers to be, you know, be an option in the grocery store shelves or like most bars and restaurants, which was not an option back there. 10 years ago, you had no breweries that offered that kind of stuff, and that's kind of, you know, where the idea came from, and you know, we stayed true to that. So goes back to, you know, like you were saying, you know, like you have that craft beer nerd, and I think like most of those guys or gals, they're not gonna go to your Costco or whatever and buy their pastry stout there. You know what I mean? And I think you know, even if Costco had it, I think to them, I think it kind of kills that romance a little bit. You know what I mean? They want to come and get it straight from the source.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget, you can always check on brewermag.com. You can also see us on YouTube and listen to us on Spotify. And don't forget daily updates on Facebook, Instagram, and X. I'm Executive Editor Jon Sicotte for brewermagazine.com.